Talk Shoes. Recorded live. Good evening, everybody, or whatever time you're listening to this. Welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. And I forgot to open my calendar. I can't keep track of the days. So welcome to the March 6, 2015 edition. And tonight's special guest is Leslie Penelope, coming to us from the Baltimore area. And let's just jump right in and just say welcome to the show. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm not bad for a guy my age. Most people my age are dead, but I'm doing okay. So,
well, that's good to hear.
Yes, exactly. So you've been characterized as a writing junkie and a romance junkie, and you live with an 80-pound lap dog and a tack cat and a husband.
Right.
I never had any furry pets, but I did have attack guppies. And people say, well, what's the utility in attack guppies? And all I can say is my house was never robbed. So apparently my guppies did their job.
I think my cat is on the job too.
Yeah. Do you have a fairly, I don't want to say vicious, but let's just say protective cat?
I do. He's protective. He's fairly vicious. Sometimes he turns against me, but it's all part of the game, you know. If I scream during the interview, it's probably because he decided that he didn't like what I was saying and he punished me. So it's all a fine line.
We'll keep that in mind, and when you do scream, I won't just immediately dial 911 to your house. So basically, do you characterize yourself mostly as like a writer? Would you call yourself a writer?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been writing my whole life, so yeah, I do.
Yeah, and then there's intimations that you started out pretty young. How young did you start like putting your writer's imagination together?
I have the first story I ever wrote, which was when I was 5 years old. I called it a novel. It's about a page and a half. But so as soon as I learned how to write, I was writing stories. I was making up stories.
Wow. And so what fueled that? I mean, that's a pretty young age. I mean, obviously kids all have an imagination, or most kids do. So how do you come by that so early?
I'm not sure. I think that I was always incredibly shy, like insanely shy, very introverted. And so that was the way, growing up from that very young age all the way through, to express myself, to sort of work out what was in my head without actually having to talk to other people.
Right.
That's probably a large part of it.
And so while your imagination is kind of whatever, I don't want to say going wild, but while it's active, what were kind of like the basis of your stories? Were they based on things that you saw around you, or was it a matter of you having like an inner imagination that was bringing you places that you had never been?
Yeah, it was the latter. I really resisted the whole write what you know thing for a long time, like growing up as a kid and a teenager, because I didn't think what I knew was very interesting, And so I was really, it's all imagination. It was creating new worlds and exploring them and imagining different places. And those are what my stories, the things I had no experience with and probably didn't want to have experience with necessarily all the time. But, yeah, all imagination.
And so, you start that early. You're in elementary school, grammar school, whatever people say. And were you a creative writer for your schoolwork, or was this kind of a private thing for you?
I did it. Whenever there was an opportunity to do creative writing in school, I did. When I was young, my parents put me in these writers' workshops almost every summer. The local community college had, some sort of children's writing workshop during the summer. So instead of going to camp, like sleepaway camp, I would do stuff like that. And whenever there was a writing class, like I remember when I got to middle school, there was actually a creative writing class, and I absolutely took that, and I loved it.
Very cool. And then, I'm guessing, of course, you wrote through high school and later. When did you start thinking about the fact that you could write stories and other people could read them?
I think it was around middle school when I wrote this poem, and it was published in this, like, I forgot what it was called. It was one of those sort of vanity things, like you pay some money and your poem is published. But as a kid, it was like the greatest thing ever, and people are reading my poem. It was this huge volume of other works, like the world's volume of poetry, something like that. And
Right.
so I had that experience kind of early. And I was a co-editor of my high school literary magazine, so I was, already getting myself out there in front of the audiences that I could reach. I considered majoring in creative writing in college, but I kind of put that aside. At that time, I didn't think I wanted to do it for a living. I was like, it'd be too hard, if I have to do it. Assuming that I could have actually made a living at that point writing, but it did cross my mind, and I considered it for a while.
Yeah. And were you a good student, bad student, okay student, average? How were you grade-wise? How did you fit into kind of like the high school hierarchy?
Yeah, I was, I was a good student, sort of just, I'm not going to say teacher's pet. I don't know, maybe someone else would say that. But, yeah, rule follower.
Well, that was the next question, yeah.
Yeah. My mom was a teacher, and I guess because I was shy and introverted, I was really good at following rules, and I didn't have a problem with it. I wasn't like a rebel or anything. I kind of just did my thing, honor roll, and, went home and wrote and read like crazy.
Yeah, I wasn't a writer or anything in high school, and it took me till my sophomore year to figure out the trick. And the trick for me was figuring out how to get great grades with less effort than I did getting crappy grades. And well, no, I mean it was a trick. You play your teachers. You play them. And
yeah. Yeah, some people are good at that and kind of think in that way. I just never did. It never really occurred to me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So you go through, elementary school, you're starting to write, you obviously are extroverted enough, excuse me, to put your writing out there, because that's a pretty brave thing, because of course, when you write and when people critique your writing, if they don't like it, then there's a tendency, almost a certainty, to, invalidate your sense of self, because, they don't like my writing, therefore I must be worthless, therefore blah, blah, blah. And all of these things are things that happen to people at any age. It's not necessarily a school thing, because, when people ask for a critique for writing, even now online or at the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website, a lot of people are just looking for a cheerleader and don't really want to take a critique. How were you in terms of, people talking about your writing and possibly critiquing it, or were your stories that well put together that you didn't get much critiquing?
I had good feedback. I mean, I had a lot of support and a lot of positive feedback about my writing. I think that sometimes I was writing stories that were, I don't know, a little bit crazy or disturbing. Like I was writing murder mysteries at 9 and 10, and my parents were like, why are you being so dark? What's wrong? Are you okay?
You need some counseling.
Exactly.
Some issues here that we should be talking about. Yeah.
Right. So that was the kind of feedback. It was more kind of content when I would go dark with stuff.
Right.
And most of it was positive. I mean, I did, in the classes there was an element of critique, and I took it as just always wanting to get better.
Right.
So there's a certain amount of having a thin skin that I think any artist has, but I always sought out critique because I was just really interested in just doing the best that I could and making sure people enjoyed it and trying to get better.
And that kind of belies, I mean, yeah, you could be shy, but also, apparently you had a good sense of self, a good enough sense of self to see the utility in listening to other people. A lot of people just go, they didn't like me, or they didn't like my story, therefore they don't like me. So that's pretty cool. Did you have good support at home, too, while you're growing up and writing?
Yeah, definitely. And part of it was kind of feeling insecure in a lot of other areas, but feeling like I was a good writer, and that was the thing that was my thing, So I wasn't
Right.
an athlete, I wasn't like popular, but I knew I had this thing that I got, I thought I was good at it. I was getting good feedback, so that sort of lent me the confidence that that I had where I didn't have it in other areas.
Right. Right. Okay, and so once you left high school, where'd you go? Did you go on to what do they call it, post-secondary education?
I did. I went to college. I went to Howard University.
Uh-huh. And what did you major in?
I majored in film production. So I
Okay.
had this. It was kind of that between that and computer science, oddly enough. And I chose film production because it was so creative. I'm kind of equally left brain, right brain. So, I was always interested in sort of technical stuff and creative stuff. And film. When I was like, oh, I'm not going to major in creative writing because but I'm going to major in film. Like, it can have a reasonable. I mean, you can have a reasonable career in various aspects of film, but it's not necessarily any more practical.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, there's an allure there. I mean, I do film production, I do screenwriting. There's definitely an allure to know that what you wrote, not only could it be made into a film, but think about that. Here's 150 people who are working at essentially my creative behest. And that's kind of cool, and to be able to tell a story in a way that other people find it so compelling, they go, hey, somebody has to see this. So I think that's pretty cool. So, and like, I mean, you majored in film, so were you, did you learn the fundamentals and then jump right into maybe doing some student projects, or how did that all shake out? Because there are some people who go through Howard, they do, the fundamentals, they do a little bit of their student film, and either they stop or they just decide this is it, and then they jump right in. How was it for you?
Yeah, I remember, jumping in pretty early, freshman year, getting involved in crewing on people's films, and knowing that that was going to be the best way to get experience. Because the classes are one thing, but you don't really learn anything until you're out on set and in it.
Right. And I understand you did at least one stint for the 48-hour film project?
I actually did it 5 times.
Okay, cool. Even better.
Yeah.
So you didn't learn your lesson, huh?
It was great. The 48-hour film project is just such a fun thing to do when you're, it's not my day job, but I got to do it every year for a while and get my friends together and make a movie and go see it in a theater. It's great.
And how did you fare? I mean, were you like the writer, producer? What role did you usually play on your team?
I always, it was my team. I always so I was generally the director. Sometimes I shot it. I was always involved in the writing and the editing, so, it was dependent on the year, but it was always me fielding the team and always trying to make it collaborative because of the time crunch and knowing that everyone's bringing something to the table, something unique. And, but yeah. I actually did it 6 times.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. You did it 6 times?
Yeah, I was just going back and trying to remember.
Man,
yeah.
You must be a lot younger than me because, staying up for that whole weekend, because essentially that's what you do. Most people probably don't know. For those who don't know, the 48-hour film project is a contest that goes from city to city to city worldwide. And essentially in the contest, you have exactly 48 hours. And they're not kidding about 48 hours. If you show up a minute late, you're just out of luck. But you have 48 hours to write, shoot, and post-produce a 3 to 7 minute movie. And in order to make sure that people don't cheat right before the 48 hours starts, they give you a couple variants, a male and a female variant on a person's name and their job title. They give you a line of dialogue that has to be in the film and a prop. And all of those elements have to be in each movie, regardless of genre. So essentially when you show up at the 48-hour film project headquarters for your city, you're sitting around, then you pull a genre. And then once you pull a genre, once everybody's got their genre, and if they didn't like it, they get to pull again. But then they have to pull much harder group of genres like musical. Musical's not easy to do. We always prayed we didn't pull that. And then you have at 7 p.m. on Friday night, boom, they let you out of the room, and you have to go and you write. Generally, you write most of the night, and then Saturday you do most of your filming. And hopefully, if you can get done Saturday, then you can post-produce Sunday up until 7 o'clock. You have to show up with your DVD or your flash drive or whatever that has the post-produced movie. When you did your first one, go ahead.
I actually got a musical. I think, what was it, the second year I did it, we made a musical. It was supposed to be a hip-hop musical. There was a lot of beatboxing involved. So.
And how did that work out?
I think that's honestly one of my favorite ones that I've done. I kind of like them all. There's one year that I disavow, but the other 5 I'm really proud of.
Well, my first year doing, if you don't mind me telling a little story, do you mind?
Sure. No.
My first year, some people asked me, could you help us write? And I said, sure. I had never done a script, but I knew I had some good writing chops. I could help with dialogue, with situation, and things like that. So we go to the headquarters, we pull our genre, we're going back to our headquarters or our little office building where we were going to work out of. And when we got there, the guy who was supposed to be a writer was really an actor. And so I guess he thought by acting like he was a writer, he was going to be a writer. And I had a nervous breakdown. I had a nervous breakdown. I was sweating. I couldn't talk to anybody for like 45 minutes. I was a mess because if there's no script, you've got like 40, 50 people sitting around there waiting to see what they have to, the props they have to get for the next day, blah, 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 blah. And mentally I was gone, and finally they calmed me down after about 45 minutes, and I went up on Google and looked at the format of a script, and I started writing, and I wrote till about 5 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
So they got the tech people there at like 9 a.m., They started setting up. The actors came in a little bit later because they had brought their, the director phoned them all, I guess, at 4:30 in the morning and told them what their wardrobe was supposed to be. And we shot till about 11 o'clock on Saturday night, and blah, blah, blah. And then, the next week we had a couple of audience awards for our film, and then when we got to the big awards, I actually won for Best Script for Chicago. While after having a nervous breakdown.
Right.
So that's my great 48-hour film project story. But I mean, people, when you describe it, people really don't. I don't think they get the whole flavor of what that weekend is about. Like here in Chicago's a big city. You got to pay for everything. You got to pay for permits. You got to pay.
Oh,
if the police have to, let's say they have to redirect traffic away from an alley or someplace where you have to pay a fee for the police officers. But during the 48-hour film project, because you don't know what's going on, the city gives you a pass. So that's really cool that your city will give you a pass to shoot wherever you want. Well, I mean, within reason. Obviously, they don't want you jumping out of an airplane or hanging out of a building or something like that. But you're, at least you have a little more leeway in getting it done. Now, what city did you do yours in?
I did my first 3 in D.C. and my last 3 in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and Norfolk, Virginia.
And how was that like? I mean, how is it filming in D.C.? I would imagine, if you get anywhere near, the Capitol, Smithsonian, stuff like that, it would be a little more restrictive. But, I mean, what was your experience?
Yeah, we never tried to shoot any of those big locations. I think the first time it's in a city, you have to have some sort of landmark there, but we weren't. I don't think I was.
For like an establishing shot or something?
Right. But I think by the time I started, they had already had their first one. So it was more like, okay, who do I know that owns a club, or who can call, talk to the owner and get us into this coffee shop, or whose house can we shoot at, or a lot of outdoors, if the weather is good. So I mean, we weren't doing big productions. It was sort of small guerrilla type shoots where, we're just using the resources that we have. before, like in the weeks before, I try to lock down some locations, some possible locations that would, be really flexible, depending, because you don't know what genre you're going to get.
Right.
So that was usually my strategy, get the people in place, get some possible locations that will give us permission, and figure out, where I'm editing, what the logistics are. At a certain point, I lived, too far from the drop-off point. So I was editing at home, but I had to find a place to edit that was closer, so I wouldn't have like an hour drive, and have to finish much earlier. So all of those logistical things. And so, in D.C., it was just, we would shoot in, places that we knew. We were shooting on U Street, we were shooting in Maryland, and, just places that we had access to, that were familiar to the people who are on my crew.
Yeah, and you do try to make it easy on yourself, because really, 48 hours is not a lot of time.
No.
And a lot of people don't realize, even shooting a 7-minute movie, even shooting a 4-minute movie and getting it post-produced and things like that, that's a pretty big deal, which is why it makes such a great contest.
Right.
Since you've done 48-hour film project events, have you done other things in film?
I did. I co-directed and edited and produced a documentary. If you're familiar with the website okplayer.com, it originally was the website for The Roots. It's kind of a hip-hop website community. It's grown so much since its origins. But we did a documentary around 2005 on online communities and what did it mean to meet people online when it was still sort of a new and scary concept, and form relationships with people online. We sort of followed people who created business relationships, friendships, marriages, all through this one particular website where everyone had gotten together because of a common love of the Roots and hip-hop music.
Right. And did you work directly with the Roots?
It was like not sponsored by them. I mean, First Love appears in the documentary, commented in the documentary. So we were able to interview people associated with the site along with just the regular day-to-day users and fans. And so it wasn't, official, but it was something that was done by people. All of us who worked on it met on the site.
Yeah, it was a fan film.
Yeah, essentially.
Wouldn't you call it that? I mean,
because it's like a fan film about this thing that they created, this place that they created that allowed all of the fans to come together, and it sort of surpassed fandom and became just part of life. This impacted people's lives in so many ways.
Yeah, and where can people catch that online?
It is okmentory.com.
Okay, what?
It's kind of a weird title. It's like a play on OK Player, but it's okmentory, okaymentory.com.
Okay. All right, cool. I just wanted to do that because a lot of people pick this up as a podcast later. So even if I put a link in the chat, people don't see that who log on later. And we definitely want people to take a look at your work. So while you're doing this, are you still engaged as a writer? You're doing these things simultaneously. You're moving forward on kind of all these fronts, or are you kind of back and forth on it? Give us a little idea of, you've obviously done the film, and that was earlier. Where's the writing at this time?
So after college, the writing sort of took a backseat. I was still kind of writing little personal things. I was writing poetry and song lyrics and short stories here and there, but I wasn't pursuing publication in any way. Sort of just like day job, and then when I started working on the film, and just I started my business in 2003. So a lot of other things were happening, and so I wasn't thinking about the writing as much as I had been before.
Right.
And that was kind of how it went until, when I got my first Kindle, which was probably 2006 or so, my reading just, I had always been a voracious reader, but, once you get the Kindle, and now books are cheaper and you can just download them instantly, I started reading a lot more. so much more than I had before. And then slowly the writing came back. What was really the change was after I got married and I moved, my husband was working that's when I moved to Virginia from Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was a newlywed. I worked from home at that point full time in a new place, still fairly shy, difficult to meet people. And I saw a flyer for this writer center. And there's a place called the Muse Writer Center in Norfolk, Virginia. And I started taking writing classes there just as a way to get out of the house and meet people.
Right.
And that was 2008. And that was really when this, section of my writing career started, when I became much more serious about just writing, every day and trying to finish things. It took me a while to actually finish something, but that was the turning point.
And so, okay, that's about 2008. When was your first book published?
This is my first book. I just published in January.
Very cool.
Of this year.
Okay,
yeah.
so you spent all that time honing your craft. Did you have how do I put this? You had peers, okay, that you were seeing. You had this group that probably, the way you say it, was pretty inspirational. How did that help your process?
It really, I hadn't been critiqued in a long time, probably since college. And so when I started taking these writing classes and it got into a kind of a workshop that was ongoing, they were classes and then there would be a break and basically the same people would sign up again. So you were following people's work as they developed and as they grew, and they were following you and you were getting good feedback. And you had this group of people who were waiting for your work. Like you had to turn it in every few weeks and you didn't want to let them down. And that was absolutely just so vital to me, learning how to finish things, not only just honing my craft and becoming a better writer, but just becoming a more consistent writer, which also helps you become better the more you do it. So, that was just it was transformational. It really allowed me to get to the point where I really thought that I could write a novel, because I was writing short stories this whole time. The idea of a novel just was it just seemed impossible. How could I have that much to say? I just had no idea how I would ever do that. So I did spend a long time.
I was entirely backwards. I started with novels, and I struggle with short stories because apparently there's too many words in me.
You're long-winded.
Well, yeah, I don't want to prejudge myself or anything like that, but I just find it a little more. I would have benefited from that experience, and I think a lot of people will, because a lot of people are not able to finish a project, and so learning that skill alone is probably it's more valuable than one would think at the very beginning. People say, "Oh yeah, I could write. I write all the time." Well, have you finished anything? Well, not yet. And you say, well, why is that? Because, I work all day, I do this, I do that, and it's hard to get into it, and I only write when I feel like it. I have friends here in Chicago who tell me that, I've been working on a book. Really? How long? Well, I've been working on it for 11 years. I go, well, okay, so what's stopping you from finishing it? and that's it.
Yeah.
They haven't learned the art of writing as a job, and it is a job. People don't realize that it is a job, and if you treat it like a job, you'll get it done. I'm not going to rehash all of my experiences, but that was the one thing. I figured out if I stop what I'm doing and every day put in a certain number of hours, I will finish, and it works. So.
And the other thing that was really
Yeah.
vital was National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo.
Okay. Right.
For me, I had tried, you're supposed to write 50,000 words during the month of November, and that sounds completely impossible before you've ever done it. You're like, 50,000 words?
Sure.
Are you crazy?
Oh, yeah.
And I tried for several years and failed each time. And in the first year, I completed it successfully with 2011. And after you do it and you realize you can do that, then the world opens up to you. You're like, okay, these limitations that I put on myself aren't real. I can do this, absolutely.
It was kind of liberating, huh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so, you go through that experience. What kind of stories, were you still in the kind of science fiction, disturbing your parents kind of tales? But
I got,
yeah, go ahead.
My stuff is a lot less disturbing than it was when I was a child. I think I worked through that some kind of way.
Okay. Okay.
But sci-fi and fantasy have always been. There's always been something magical, something fantastical about everything that I write, for the most part. So I was writing at that time. Oh, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was writing YA and either paranormal or sci-fi YA for those couple of years.
Sure. And so, what is the attraction, the limitless imagination of science fiction and fantasy? Or, I mean, why do you think you're drawn to that particular genre? Because, you got people out there who do love stories or, those novels with Fabio on the front of them or whatever. I mean,
right.
What is it that draws you to the genre?
I grew up watching The Twilight Zone. My mom was a huge Twilight Zone fan. I would stay up on the weekends with my dad watching Doctor Who on PBS. So all of these, like my favorite shows and my family, we were kind of watching things that were, I guess, speculative is the best way to describe them. And I was so steeped in that X-Files, Twin Peaks, all of these things were kind of formative. And even before I was even really reading sci-fi, it was these shows and movies that were kind of inspiring me. So it was always just natural for there to be something a little weird or supernatural, even if it wasn't sci-fi. I've never really written hard sci-fi, but there was always something speculative about what I was interested in. And I think it was partly because of imagination and just, being taken away to another world, and partly just because of the way that you can say things without being preachy. I was kind of had lots of layers of meaning in things that I was writing. I was, kind of working through my experiences, and you can do that in sci-fi and fantasy, and you can have messages that aren't messages, that aren't like beating you over the head,
Or you can write a message, and sci-fi puts comfortable social distance or psychological or sociological distance between you and the reader, because they don't have to go, they don't have to confront what issue you're dealing with in terms of today's life. That's the secret cover that I use science fiction for. I write about social issues and things like that. And, if you write about certain things, I mean, we've got this whole psychological white folks feel so beat upon backlash because Barack Obama was elected 2 times. I don't want to get into this. Well, it's true. I mean, it scared the hell out of them. It scared the hell out of them. And so if you talk about, if you write a story about like Ferguson, Missouri going berserk and big race war, people will get skittish. People have a certain kind of reaction. But if you talk about, this happened, in the Venus colonies where we had the Irish over here and we had the Germans over, it gives you social distance, but you're still discussing the same, the same issues. So, and are your worlds, are the worlds in your short stories, were they pretty big? Were you dealing with bigger issues, or were you kind of drilling down to stories about maybe people, a handful of people and their situation? I mean, how big a world were you writing about, generally speaking?
It was always people. It's always character. I'm kind of a character-first writer, but they always existed in a rich world that, you only see a fraction of in the story. And I also wrote a lot of flash fiction, so really, really short pieces where you're, laser focused on something very small, but that exists or is sort of a metaphor for something really big,
Mhm. Mhm. So it sounds like what you did. You kind of went. You knew you had the idea. You knew you had the desire, and probably, I mean, based upon the reinforcement you got through school, you also figured you had the talent. But I mean, you deliberately set out to hone your skills and to hone them fairly publicly, because if you're in a writers group, obviously you had to perform. Um, it kind of belies the notion that you're a shy person, and you could. Well, no. You know what I'm saying, right? Because there has to be a certain inner strength to your character to be able to do that. Most people can't handle critique. Most creatives can't handle critique because, you know what? I don't know the because they don't know, because they've never been nurtured, because because. But the fact of the matter is, people who are very deliberate about honing their skills, about honing their craft, and about learning the fundamentals of what they're doing are not as common as those who just want to jump right in and make it happen. Is there something about you that you've identified from the outside that makes you a more deliberate person and gave you, the impetus to go ahead and really work on your craft? Because I think that would be interesting for other people to hear, kind of what was your self-determinant in terms of really going out and honing your skills.
Yeah, some of it is, one of the reasons why, artists don't take critique well is just because we're sensitive, because we're putting ourselves out there. It's like taking off all your clothes and like, hey, do you like what you see? It's so personal and and I I'm not immune from that, absolutely. And I think that might be part of it. Like if I'm going to do that, I want it to be the best that I can make it. So I'm sort of seeking the knowledge and to study with, people who know more than I do and to get their feedback so that I'm doing the best that I can do. It's just like I don't know if there's a level of perfectionism. I don't think I'm a perfectionist completely, but I'm sort of a control freak, and it's like quality control. It's when I've written this thing and I feel good about it. In a way, it's validation, but it's also just, I guess quality control is a good way. I've sought out workshops, I've sought out critique partners and things like that, because I don't know how else to do it. I guess there's a certain lack of whatever it is in people that can just be like, I wrote this and now it's perfect and ready for the world. I don't have that. I don't. I would, if I could buy that, I would be saving up right now. Seriously. Yeah.
But that's pretty cool that you had that, that kind of that insight about the craft and the insight about quality control. There, like you said, creatives can be sensitive, and they have all the foibles of being overly sensitive. And a lot of people just don't realize that just because somebody didn't like your story, your first novel, your film, your sculpture, whatever, that's not an invalidation of self. But it, creatives are so tied into what it is they create. Sometimes it's very, very hard to put that psychological distance between you and your work, and to realize that, well, this is not an invalidation of self. This is not some sort of statement on my place in the world or whether I'm a worthy person. I just wrote an effed up story. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Well, no. A lot of people don't get to that. They don't get to that level of realization. So when you go back, let's see, you've had your book out since January, right?
Right.
Is this you on the cover, by the way?
No, you were not the first person to ask me that, but people say
people always want to know.
Yeah, I didn't even think she looked like me, but even some of my relatives just asked, oh, she looks like you. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay, so you've had the book out, a very short amount of time. So it's probably not fair to try to, evaluate you based upon what other people say. But what kind of feedback have you gotten so far about the work? Because I'm wondering, did you have readers read your book before you, got it to that point? Did you have people who helped you, work through things, or I got so that some people just wouldn't accept my calls anymore because they're going, no, don't read me your book anymore. No, I can't really. I have to sleep. I have a life. I don't even like you. So what was your process to getting it to the point where you finally published it?
So I mentioned NaNoWriMo before, and going to workshops. I was really fortunate to have two really great critique partners who we've been all working together to get our books published. So,
okay.
Kara Stevens and Inez Johnson, and we were at a workshop together. We've stayed in touch since then. We did NaNoWriMo together 2 years ago, and we pushed each other through. And so we made this pact that we were all going to publish our book. So I have readers, and I have people that we kind of created a little Google group, and we keep each other. Accountability partners is basically what it is. And I think that every writer needs accountability partners. For those days when you're like, I didn't get any words today, or, I'm giving up on the story, you can have somebody be like, no, or, let me read it, or, whatever encouragement and checking in on you and just keeping you on task. And that's really vital, having people in your corner. And when I decided that I wanted to publish independently, I didn't even send it to agents or anything like that. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do indie publishing. I've been doing a lot of research, and I knew that I wanted to do it as professionally as possible. I wanted to make it as indistinguishable as possible from the big five publishers, because those are who you're competing against.
Right.
So not only did I have my critique partners, I found beta readers, I hired professional editors to go over it, and professional cover designer. And so I wanted just to make it, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to put this out into the world, that quality control thing. I just want it to be the best product that I can afford to put out there, and that, I'm really proud to put my name on.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about the process. You said you had professional editors. You had beta readers.
Yes.
And how did you get to, what was your process to getting to the actual point where you uploaded it to whomever you did to do your fulfillment for your printing and things like that? Was your editing process a very long process? How long did it last?
So after I had the first beta read and did the revision, I found a developmental editor through one of the online writing groups I'm on. And so that was, I'm trying to remember, that's the editing process for me. It kind of took a long time, because that first developmental edit, the editor came back with an 8-page letter about everything that's wrong with the book. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to go back, and it took a few months to fix everything.
Right.
And then, have a few more people read it, and copy edits, and then proofreading. So that did take about 4 months total, I think, from the beginning of the editing until, maybe 5 months, until the final proofread. So I get it back from the proofreader because I am a website developer. I formatted the ebooks myself. I also formatted the print books myself, because I had experience doing that. And I did both ebook and print on demand. And then, put it up for pre-order on Amazon and sent it to CreateSpace, and got my physical proof copies back, and started telling everybody, oh, I have a book. I wrote a book.
And so, just for the brief time that you've been published, have you gotten much feedback on the book?
I have. Yeah, I've been really pleased with the feedback. When you put it out there, obviously not everybody's going to like it. It's not for everyone. And I had to kind of get ready for whatever people had to say about it. But it's on Goodreads and Amazon. I think it's got, on Amazon a little over 4-point-something stars average. And so, the reviews that I've been getting, the feedback I've been getting is largely positive. And so yeah, I've been really pleased with that.
Mm-hmm. And is this a standalone, or do you see this as a series? Tell the people a little bit about the story.
Sure, it's a planned series. I have 4 books planned, and it's a fantasy romance or romantic fantasy, depending on how you want to look at it. It's vaguely, like very lightly steampunk, almost diesel punk, really. It takes place in an alternate 1920s world where it focuses on these 2 nations that have been at war for 500 years, and there's a magical barrier between them. And my main character is biracial, so she has parents from each country that have been at war, and so she isn't accepted fully by either. She's basically an outcast in the land that she lives in because one of the people is magical and one is not. And so it's about her leaving her isolated world where her family tried to shelter her from this reality, the hostility that she's going to face, and kind of being forced out into the world and trying to find her place and trying to find some place to belong and ending up being really important to the future of these nations and to ending this long war.
And so the first volume of your 4 that covers like her earlier life.
No, each volume is going to cover different people, so it's in the larger world.
Good.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So her complete story, you're going to see her again, but the whole series is about these 2 nations and kind of the future that happens. So they've been at war. What happens in the future with these people and the characters that you meet?
Okay. And so, how did you go about world building? Were you at the point where you were doing the character-driven story first, or did you lay out the world that they were going to inhabit? What was your creative process?
This book is really interesting because I wrote the first draft. It was supposed to be a novella. It ended up being 90,000 words by the end, but my first draft was 20,000 words, and I wrote it in 2 days. I had this burst of inspiration. I saw these characters in my head. I wrote like 10,000 words one day and 11,000 words the second day, and my wrists were very angry at me. But I had these people that had come alive.
Right.
But what I did not have was the world. And so I had ideas. I had sketches of it. I knew like the broad strokes, but a lot of the revision was really defining that. And I knew the time period. I knew that they had that technology of the 1920s, and then I had to figure out the magical system because I had just a very vague notion of that. And one day I sat down and I wrote the history of 500 years of war and each battle and all of that stuff. So that the world building, it takes a long time for me just to think through everything, try to give some thought to the economics, the religion, the transportation, all of that stuff, and kind of create a series Bible that I can refer to for the future.
Yeah, it would seem like, well, no, it is. I'm not going to even mince words. It's essential to any multi-volume. If you have a multi-volume series that you want to put together, and you're talking about a fairly extensive world, because you can't tell a story in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. So building that world building is a very important thing, and it's certainly not an intuitive process. You can go, oh man, it would be great. Okay, so for steampunk, there's no electricity. And I was at a conference last week, and somebody said, well, I was writing this thing, and then all of a sudden I realized that I had somebody walk in the room and flip the light switch. Well,
yeah.
You can't have, it has to be consistent. And a lot of people don't even realize that magic has to be consistent as well.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a consistent basis for magic, there has to be some structure because, what if in the last act, all of a sudden you pull this magical attribute out of your butt that didn't show up anyplace else in the book? People feel cheated, because they feel like someone manipulated them, and they just made it, it cheapens the process. So now that you've got this world built, you're probably going to add to it with every single volume because you're going to be covering different aspects of other people's lives, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I have there's other countries in this world that I have thought about them and how they interact. I want to do something like there's 4 books in this series, but I want to do some short stories that explore other parts of the world that aren't necessarily relevant to the series, but are still, because I have I've been building this world for 2 years or whatever, and there's a lot that's in it that you don't see, so it's ongoing, yeah.
What was the hardest part about putting together this first book for you? What was the most troublesome aspect of getting this first book published?
For me, the choices. Like when you're writing a novel and you're sitting in front of a blank page and you know the beginning and you know the end, there's infinite possibilities for the middle. Like I sort of, I'm halfway plotting, halfway pantsing. I know where I want to go, but I felt that at a certain point there were just so many choices, and I had to narrow it down, and I had to figure out what's best for the story and really go into the theme and what am I trying to say with this, because it was difficult to narrow things down. I would go in different directions and write things and try to then bring it back together. But the actual craft of the story and completing it, that was the hardest part. Publishing is a whole other set of challenges.
Well, I call it the 80-20. Yeah, I call it the 80-20 rule. That a lot of self-published people don't realize that 80% of what you do is about the business of doing business, and the 20% actually ends up being the creative part. Because what the creative part, writing, especially for writing, unless you're doing a collaborative story or something like that, it's a singular pursuit. But then when you get to the point where you want to market, where you want to spread it out, where you want to try to get people to find it, that's a bigger full-time job than just the writing. The writing is one full-time job, or at least a part-time job.
Yeah.
But the marketing is huge, and for you, when you got the book written and you got to the point where you were, it was done, you got it on Amazon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, how did you decide you were going to market the book and get the word out?
Yeah, that is the hardest part, absolutely. And I don't want it to take up 80% of my time, but I haven't really calculated it, and I'm afraid that it might be. But it's difficult. There is some of the conventional wisdom in sort of the indie publishing community is just like, just write the next book. The best marketing you can do is the next book. And, because with one book out, you don't want to spend a lot of money on ads when if you had more books, then the ads would be doing double duty. But at the same time, I do want people to be able to discover it. So I haven't done a lot of marketing. I'm in KDP Select, so I will be using the Kindle Countdown deal at the end of March, and at some point, to put it on sale and run some ads that way. And so there's been a couple of promotional things that I'm going to do that I have my eye on, but I'm not spending a huge amount of time on that because it is a 4-book series, and there's certain things that I know I'm not going to be able to do until sometime next year when the 4th book comes out,
Right. Did you, it's hard for me to tell just looking at this cover of the book, did you put anything on the front of the book that said this is volume 1 of a 4-book series?
It is, it says Earthinger Chronicles Book 1. It's hard to see it at the smaller size, but it does say Book 1 on the front.
I ran into that problem. I started a trilogy, and at the very beginning, on the title on the cover, it says Volume 1 of the Dark Side Trilogy. And my trial for that is, I had several of the big ones. I had HarperCollins, Tor, and Penguin look at it, and I even had Warner Brothers look at it for maybe optioning for a movie. But when you tell everybody right away that, oh no, this is the first volume of 3, they want to see how you're going to prosecute the whole trilogy. And before they decide, well, you're worthy, we want to pick you up or whatever, because in my case, they may think, mine has to do with a colony of African Americans secretly living on the back of the side of the moon for the last 50 years. So what if in the third book, I've said this before, I have these folks come back to Earth and kill all the white people in America. I'm sure HarperCollins would consider that a bad investment had they optioned me or picked me up, and their editor would have done everything possible to dissuade me. So, having done that, now I have to wait. Third one's going to come out, and then we'll see. These people will weigh me. We'll find out if I'm worthy. They'll deign to talk to me, things like that. And in large part, I think that my mentality was very, very similar to yours in just saying, screw it, I'm going to do this because not only do I get it out there, but I managed to maintain a certain amount of control that I may not have if, HarperCollins comes to me and says, oh, yeah, we've assigned you John Doe or, Jane Smith or whatever, and she's going to be your editor. And essentially, everything I've heard is editors basically – they don't write themselves, but they kind of want to pee on your book to make it partly theirs, and nobody wants to see their creativity short-stopped by someone else.
Right.
So, I mean, what other elements? I mean, what was the big deal about you going and self-publishing? What was the main impetus for you deciding to do that? Just not wanting to go through the effort of having to send out, 100 free books to people who may not even read them, or I mean, what was it, the uphill climb? Let us know, because, there's a whole lot of people who listen to this show who write,
Right. Yeah. For me, self-publishing, I've always done things myself, like the whole DIY mentality. The documentary that we made. No one in the film world says, oh, you can't make that film yourself. You have to wait for Miramax to, say it's okay. But when you're writing books, there's been a backlash against self-publishing because it must not be that good if you're putting it out yourself. And I never felt like I needed that sort of validation. I mean, there are people who their dream is to be published by a big publisher and to see their book in Barnes and Noble. And I don't take anything away from them, but that wasn't me. I've always kind of just done the DIY thing artistically, and I was really interested in having that control and having being able to choose my cover and my cover designer. When you're published by a major publisher, you don't have any say in that usually. And I was concerned about working with an editor. And like you said, is that person just going to want their voice, and there's no guarantee, no matter whether you hire the editor yourself or you assign one by a publishing house. And it's a matter of when I hire them myself, I have no, I'm not under any responsibility to take everything that they say, because
you're the final arbiter of your own destiny. Yeah.
Right.
And you know how else I can tell that you were self-published? Just by looking at the front of your book, the face page of your book. Your name is not bigger than the title.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Go to Barnes & Noble. Walk down the aisle and look at all of the covers. Look at whatever covers you want to look at, and you will find that probably more often than not, about 85% of the time, you're going to see that the author's name is bigger than the title of the book, because publishers sell by author. They don't sell by title. They sell by author. And so, they want to put Jackie Collins' name really big, or Tom Clancy. And then it's, okay, this is a cover I haven't seen, so this is a new one, so I should grab this one. And that's how the major publishers publish a book. And so it's refreshing to see for you. Here you decided, the title, Song of Blood and Stone, is important because that's the title of the book. And especially, I think, for a series, you're going to get a lot of pushback from a publisher. But again, like you said, you're going to be the self-determinant for your own enterprise. Hang on a second. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio program, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website, where there are wonderful creatives there. Not quite 24/7 because we all have to get some sleep, but we have people there from all around the world. Africa. Ran into a guy from Ireland. A guy from Ireland stopped in there one time. So check out the website. This is the March 6th edition, and we're talking to Leslie Penelope about her book, Song of Blood and Stone, her film career as a professional 48-hour film project contestant, and a woman who is driven, who is smart, and who is determined to have control over her own life. Now, was that a good enough representation of who you are?
Yes, I'm going to have to put that on my business cards.
Okay. Yeah, see, I tried the most fun you can have with your clothes on, but people read that wrong. So you have to be very careful about what tagline you put on your business cards.
You do.
Since we're in the second hour here, let's talk a little bit about, okay, we know that you've got a 4-book series. Actually, do you have synopses for all 4 books, or do you have them kind of sitting in your head so you know where everything's going?
I have a text file with a paragraph or 2 about each book. So
right.
A lot of it's in my head. The broad strokes are written out for the whole series.
And so are your collaborative helpers, are they going to, you're still going to use the same process to get to the publishing point? Or do you think that now that you've got the first one out, you know what the process is like, you'll be able to better handle it alone? What you're thinking on, is having the first one out going to change your process at all?
I plan to go through a very similar process. Hopefully just more streamlined. But I found the editors that I used invaluable. I think that I really enjoyed being edited, and they were pointing out things that it's hard as the author when you're so close to it to see. You try to get distance from it, but it's impossible to really get distance. So you do need outside eyes on it. And so, yeah, absolutely. My critique partners are going to get the first shot. And I've already scheduled my developmental editor for book 2. So at least the first few, I'm never going to not have it beta read and not have it looked at by the people that I trust to give me good feedback. I think that's just a really important part of the process. And
then, go ahead.
No, just also because I want to use the same people for all 4 books. So there's some continuity too.
Yeah, that's probably very important. So the first one came out to be how many thousand words? Did you say 90,000, 80,000?
It's 90,000 words, yeah.
90,000 words. And so how long do you figure you'll be, it's going to take you to do a 90,000 word volume?
That is what I'm trying to, or I'm planning on having book 2 out at the end of the summer or early fall. So I'm working through the draft now, and I want to, the series needs to end next year because I have all kinds of other ideas. So I write fairly fast, first draft, like fast and dirty, and then I spend a lot of time refining, revising, and cleaning things up.
Yeah, well, that's prodigious. That's still really good. And it sounds like you've got your process down, so it's not like the distractions of the day will keep you, I haven't written anything for about a week now because the cherry trees were blooming, or whatever the excuse is in Maryland. I'm not sure. I went to Ocean City, Maryland, and I found the boardwalk there when I was visiting. I was visiting the bicentennial, but I got out of the area because I didn't know if all hell was going to break loose in the Capitol because of the bicentennial or not. So tell us a little bit about your life there. You mentioned that you work from home during the day.
Right.
Do you mind telling us what you do?
I am a website developer and multimedia consultant.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about your business, because I would think that certain things that you learn about multimedia development and website design, they play well in writing, because what you manage to do is, if you have an understanding of how people think and how people reason and how people make their decisions, I think you're a better writer, because you understand the human condition on a not usual level, almost on a subconscious level for them, not for you. How has that worked for you, and what drew you to it? I mean, is it the whole nerd thing that you talked about early on in life? Well, no. I mean, come on. Look how many people in these kinds of professions end up writers. Look at how many people from the Navy, from the armed forces, they end up as writers because they have an understanding of, I don't want to say nerd space, because too many people think of it as negative, but a lot of people come from those walks of life. I mean, first of all, what drew you to doing this kind of work, and does it help you? Does it help you in your writing?
I always kind of was the one in the family who dealt with the computer,
right,
from being a child. And I took computer programming classes in high school. I ended up minoring in computer science instead of majoring in college. And for me, when I got to, and then I went on to get a master's in multimedia, because having a background in film and computer science, it was like a natural fit. It's
absolutely.
Visual, the web came around, and I was right at the right age when it started to kind of, I don't think, get on the ground floor, but I mean, it was part of everything,
Right.
So it made a lot of sense with my interest to get into multimedia.
And go ahead.
That was it. Go on.
And does it help you with your writing? With the conceptual work that you have to do for world building or anything like that, or is there not really much spillover at all?
I haven't really thought about whether it helps as a writer. I think that troubleshooting skills in general, like if you're a programmer and you get stuck inside of some code, there are correlations, I think, and also video editing. That part of it really I correlate more so than even the multimedia.
For linear and non-linear storytelling?
Well, yeah, just putting a story together. Linear editing, I did actually do some of that when I was in college. It was the end of cutting film with razors. But if you're editing a video, you're putting together the scenes, you're telling the story visually, even if you're just the editor and you didn't write or direct or do anything else. Just the act of putting it together in a way that makes sense is creating a story. It's telling a story visually. And so I think that those skills relate a lot to the writing, probably more so than the multimedia and the programming.
Yeah, but they're complementary skills.
I think so.
Yeah. Somebody wants to know where the idea of Earth Song came from.
Earth Song is the magic system in my book, In Song of Blood and Stone. And it's basically a natural sort of energy-based magic. Earth Song is the combined energy of the earth. And if you are an earth singer, you tap into that, and then you can manipulate that. And the idea, I've always been interested in sort of the idea of like the metaphysical and manipulating energy in a sort of way, and stuff that is, I don't want to say mind over matter, but that idea of kind of connecting to a universal supply, a universal power that is behind everything.
0 point energy.
Yeah. And the actual terminology, I knew somebody who was kind of into very I want to say, the word I can think of right now is woo-woo sort of stuff. And he once told me that, the earth vibrated at C sharp or something like that. There was a note that the earth vibrated at. And that kind of stuck with me. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I kind of took that idea and was like, oh, well, there's this energy that, everything is energy, matter. You go down to the quantum level, it's just vibrating, it's just energy. There isn't really matter. And what if that is that power? You can tap into this energy that creates everything and then manipulate it. And so that's where Earth Song came from.
Mhm. So, I mean, it sounds like it's an underlying basis for your world building in the first place, and it's a way of maintaining the consistency across all of your stories with a universal constant, your magical universal constant.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard of the Earth vibrating at middle C. Well, no,
I've looked it up since then. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are places on Earth where they hear tones, or they'll hear, there's neighborhoods where you actually can hear. I mean, I picked it up on YouTube. I've learned too much from YouTube. One thing is never drive in Russia. And,
oh yeah.
They got like hundreds of crap. Well, never mind. The other is never date a woman who has a stripper pole in her living room or bedroom. But that's an aside. But I mean, there are, I mean, the plausibility of the fact that the Earth, has energy, that we have 0-point energy in the universe where energy could be leaking through or tapped into from the spaces, in interdimensional space, things like that. These are memes that are comfortable enough that other people can pick up on them without you having to do a lot of exposition. And let's be honest, there's some manner of plausibility. I mean, how many people talk about, the fact that, oh, I've seen ghosts, or, oh, when somebody died, they came to me before, just as they were dying, or, there are a lot of components to human existence that are not scientifically provable, but they make for very, very plausible storylines. So, I mean, being able to tap into that gives you a pretty good audience, because if you do it well, they're going to be familiar enough and they're going to like the story. I'll see somebody's asking for all of the, okay, somebody wants to talk about, they go, though the book was a romance, Jasmine didn't want to wait around for the prince to save her. Could you talk a little bit about your personal thoughts on feminism?
Feminism, wow, it can be loaded. Just in terms of Black women, I feel like have a very complicated relationship with feminism. But in terms of the actual book and, not waiting around for someone to be saved by somebody, I think that I've always been attracted to strong female characters. I've always wanted to write strong female characters. And it kind of becomes a cliche. Okay, what is a strong female character? But just a character that I would admire and want to stay inside of a book with for 90,000 words, And yeah.
And at its base, it's just good storytelling. If you create a good three-dimensional character who's interesting and who is driven by either a set of values or a quest, them navigating life's foibles can become very, very interesting if it's told well.
Right.
As far as the relationship between feminism and black women, you're right. That's deep. I mean, and it's not something that you can't. Well, no, I mean, it's not something you casually talk about. When you only have like 45 minutes left in a radio show. But there are actually scholars out there who believe that the women's movement in the 70s was very instrumental in high unemployment and difficulties with black men finding jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's something that's been studied. And to try to prove something that's been studied in your, like if you have a bone to pick in your book, sometimes that just detracts from a very, very good story. And it sounds to me like you picked your characters based on a very, very good story first, and then built world around them. Would that be fair to say for the first book?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, I was, the adage, write the stories you want to read. I was writing characters that I wanted to read about and that were interesting to me.
And let's talk about, your perspective on race and what you write. It sometimes it can be very complicated. Sometimes it's just a straightforward matter of, I write about people I know or write about people that I know about. What role does race play in what you write?
Race, I mean, this story, it's about essentially a girl who is biracial, and it's a fantasy world, so I'm trying not to bring our particular baggage into it, but just the idea of feeling isolated, feeling like you don't belong, feeling like you don't identify 100% with either side. Those were the things I was really exploring. And in the background of, mutual prejudice and, kind of animosity between two groups based on a history. I mean, all of that. That's, like you said, you can use fantasy and science fiction to talk about these things and as a lens with which to view them. So, and also I make I don't know if it's a commitment, but I don't ever see myself not writing about characters of color or characters who have been marginalized based on race. I think that a lot of, whether people are traditionally published or indie published, I just see a lot of writers, for marketability reasons, which, is their choice, obviously, but I see a lot of, Black writers with white people on the cover exclusively. And I knew that I didn't want to do that. And those are some of the stories that come to me to tell. I'm telling stories about my experience and people that I know and just my thoughts on these experiences. And so it's important to me as an artist to not shy away from those things. And I thought about the cover a lot, knowing that I was going to indie publish and knowing that, okay, well, if the big publishers are whitewashing their covers, it must be because they don't think that covers with Black people on them sell. So do I get caught up in that because I'm an independent person and I have to market it myself? And, all these thoughts kind of went through my mind. But every time I would see, come across an author website, I'm like, oh, they're a Black author, let me check them out. Wait, all of their books have only white people on the cover. What is up with that? It would just hurt my heart so much that I knew, I have to put my characters on the cover. My characters look the way they look. So.
Well, I mean, just as playing devil's advocate, I mean, when you think about the total readership out there, Black books make up 11%. Is that right? 12%, 11, 12, 13% of the population, and you do want to be successful from a business perspective. And, and there is nothing to say that a Black author has to write a Black-themed story. I mean, there are techno thrillers, there are dramas, there are all kinds of stories out there, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and just because you're Black doesn't mean you have to be pigeonholed into writing only Black-themed work. And so it could be a marketing thing, it could be something else, but you deliberately chose because of the reasons that you just stated, which I think are very noble, and let's just say that they're not the easiest way to go. I mean, we all know that people still choose the books that they read unless they've read a great review and they go, oh, I've got to read that. People still choose books the way, they do judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
and I'm really not trying to down people because I understand.
No, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that, and I've gotten really good feedback, like people saying, "Oh my gosh, there's a woman of color on the cover," and these are Black people and white people based on social media pictures, So, and I knew there was a risk, and I know that, it's not the easiest thing to do, and I had to kind of decide, all right, what is this? What am I going to do? What is my career going to be? Or, I'm not going to whitewash my own cover. Now I
Sure.
could obviously not have anybody on the cover. I mean, there's different choices and different stories will have different needs and everything else. But just when I go to a bookstore and I see a Black woman on the cover, I know the feeling I have in my heart and how good I feel and how excited I get. And I just wanted to have that, give that experience to someone else,
Mhm. Mhm. And even though it's been out only a short amount of time, do you have any handle on the demographics of your readers yet, or is it way too early?
It's pretty early. From the Also box on Amazon, it looks like there's a lot of other, not even fantasy. A lot of the Also box look like there's sort of more romance, a lot of interracial romance, and things like that. I do know, on Goodreads, from what I can tell, you can kind of look at people who've reviewed it and see what other books they like. It's the people there seem a lot more mixed. It is a new adult fantasy romance, so getting sort of older YA readers. But I do see a mix from what I can tell so far.
And having written it, you focused on writing it as a young adult, a novel?
It's not young adult. It's more new adult. The characters are 19 and 21, I believe.
Okay. And so what kinds of things did you do to focus on kind of that age group?
In the writing or the marketing?
Yeah. No, in the writing. I mean, did you deliberately set out with that in mind, or did it just end up that way?
I think when the characters sort of came into my head, they were at the cusp of figuring out who they were. Like through the course of the book, the heroine and the hero go through almost coming of age type changes when you're becoming an adult and really understanding what that means. And that time period is really interesting to me. Like I said before, I was writing a lot of YA before, and now I'm writing a lot of new adult because that it's that time period where you can deal with kind of adult issues, but the scenes that I work with, they just seem to kind of go hand in hand with leaving teenageness and becoming an adult,
So, I mean, that just points up to the fact that, at least you're aware of it and you're a little bit deliberative about how you write the story because it fits right in there for you, correct?
Right, yeah. Yeah.
I got nothing. There are so many people have no idea that when you set out to write a book, some people will write a linear story and they just tell that story and that's that. But if you have a focus the way you do, you've obviously put time and energy into thinking about exactly how to present your world to other people. So I mean, I see that as a deliberative good thing. It's not. A lot of people don't. You're very focused. You're very focused on what you do, and you pay a lot of attention about the details around what you do, so that you yield exactly the result that you want to have. And I think that's a good lesson, a good takeaway that people who listen to this should think about. If you're a writer, if you're a content creator, if you write a comic book, blah blah blah, whatever you do, you have to take into account your target audience and what you do, how that affects your target audience, how your target audience is going to perceive your work. So this is a very deliberate process for you, and you go about it in a very regimented way.
And also, though, once you put it out there, you kind of have to then let go. Like, I know I've done the best I can do to be deliberate, to say what I want to say. But I've had reviews that, make me question if they've read the same book that I wrote. The people will pull something completely different out of it, and it's their experience of reading the work will be different. And after it's out there for public consumption, you have to let them have it. You kind of have to let go of that tight control that you have during the creation process, because people will interpret it differently, because everybody's different. And I have seen
and their perspective is going to be different too. I mean, they're going to be people who have completely different lives that you had, and they're going to come at it from another way. I had one guy review my first book, and he said, "Oh, I can't get into it because it seems more like a Saturday Night Live sketch to me." You know, and well, no, and at first I was mad because I'm like, well, anyway,
Right.
it was like you have no idea why I wrote it, what's in it, whatever.
Mhm.
But he, again, his perspective was different. He was a white guy who said to himself, "I can't for the life of me imagine why um, a black person would be so disenchanted with living on Earth that he would abandon everything and go live on the moon in isolation with just his own people."
Mhm.
Excuse me. So I'm saying to myself, well, gee, every black person I talked to said, well, if I could take my family, I'd go in a heartbeat.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
only consideration that they have, because you know th- obviously different people see the American experience in this country, or the experience in this country, from different perspectives. So
Right.
yeah, you're going to get different people look at your work and get different things out of it, and you're right about letting go. At some point, an author has to, and they have to, for even for self-preservation, say, hey, this is the story I told, this is the story I put out there, and you can't get mad at people for saying, well, I didn't get it,
Mhm.
or I didn't like it.
Right.
So I mean, everything about you is so, it's I don't want to use the word mature, but I want to say that it's well considered, because you have gone about this in probably the most methodical way that I've seen anybody approach writing and publishing their work. And it's refreshing to run into somebody like you. No, it really is.
Well, thank you.
Um,
I do tend to obsess over the details, um, all of the details, and that was another reason to self-publish,
no,
because I
get
knew this
out.
about
Really?
myself.
Really? You obsess on the details? I
Yeah.
never would have gotten. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so, with you being that way, how do people around you, family, friends, your writing team, how do they deal with you? How do they like dealing with you? I mean, what's their experience like? You can tell us if you're a tyrant and that you're completely nuts about the process. If you want, nobody here is going to tell anybody else that you said that.
Sure, sure. Well, I know that I probably drive them crazy. One of my best friends is my critique partner, and she's so sweet, and she deals with me and talks me off the ledge all the time. Like,
Good.
I would not
Yeah.
be able to do this, without that. And my husband's also very good about that, talking me down off of the ledge and just kind of putting things back into perspective. Because I won't have like a full out panic attack, but I will just be like, I spend hours on things. Like, I'm not even going to bore you with the details. I've always been anal. I've been kind of an anal person. Like, as a child, I had a schedule that was like 6:35 wake up, 6:38 get in the shower, 6:47 eat breakfast. That level, and I forcibly loosened up over time. So I'm so far away from that now, in a lot of ways. But
Right.
but yeah, I'm very fortunate to have people around me that deal with me and that are know how to calm me down and put things back in perspective. And yeah.
So you've got your process. Everybody knows your process, and every now and then somebody has to bring you back to kind of center you,
Mm-hmm.
rather than let you go. Okay, well, that's not bad. I mean, the thing about being creative is if you're a good creative. Well, I think you said this at the beginning. If you're a good creative and you're diligent about your product and you really care, there's going to be that kind of control freak streak.
Right.
And in most ways, if you're not completely crazy, that's a good thing, because in the final analysis, you're the one responsible for quality control.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not going to step up and grab hold of that, you're liable to have a lesser product. So All of that is good. So let's talk about in the future. You got the one book out. You've got probably like the synopses of the next 3 books done. Where do you think you're going to be maybe like 5 years from now? You'll have that series out. You mentioned that you have some notes on another series that you would like to do. Is that true?
I have a totally another novella, unrelated novella that I'm probably putting out in May. It's already written. It was something that I wrote, again, really quickly and revised in between, in the times when Song of Blood and Stone was with someone else, so I had some time.
Okay.
So there's that coming out. I'm co-writing something, a paranormal romance series with my critique partner, Inez Johnson, and later this year, hopefully that will be coming out. There are a lot of irons in the fire.
Right.
In 5 years, I hope to have lots and lots of books out.
Yeah. And you just mentioned the collaborative part. How are you with the collaborative process? Because a lot of people are not able to do that. How's that working out for you?
I think actually it's really good for me because she is a lot looser, so it's a good balance. So, I admit I am the holdup most of the time because I'm like, okay, no, we have to give it one more pass. We have to look at it one more time. We have to get someone else to read it and give us feedback one more time. But I love talking through a story with people, whether I'm collaborating, in a co-writing venture or just on my story. I find it really helpful to talk things out. And so the collaborative process helps me step back, look at what someone else is bringing to the table and negotiate those things in the story and kind of just let go a little bit and let it flow from when I'm just working on my own thing.
And so obviously you can kind of subvert the you call it anal. I call it what did I call it? Not anal. The control freak. You can kind of suppress the control freak part of you enough so that you can collaborate and somebody just doesn't go, this woman is whack. I'm not doing this ever again. Okay.
I have to work with a patient person who understands me, and also is going to be like, okay, calm down.
And you mentioned you have pets, right?
I do. I have a dog and a cat.
And the cat is the one that's most disruptive.
Yeah, he rules the house. He's a pretty mean cat. I love my cat, but he's a pretty mean little guy.
Oh, you know what? I got a question on my own. And the question is, when you create characters, are they analogs of people you know, or are you able to create, unique characters out of whole cloth?
Most of my characters, they're not direct analogs. I will have pieces of people I know in some of them.
Sure.
But yeah, they're really their own people. They come, they come into my brain as their own selves, and usually when I do see pieces of people that I know, I kind of put them in there.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you think this is born of the fact that you started your very structured writing habits at a young age? I mean, is this born out of discipline, being able to do this? So what do you think fuels that kind of creativity in you?
It might be. It's discipline, experience. The more you do it, the better you are. And so I have been writing an awfully long time. I mean, I have, boxes of things that I've written over the years. So, yeah, and just, experience and discipline and wanting to take it seriously because I see, because I've been in writing groups and writing workshops with people who have been writing books, for 8-10 years, and I understand that. I spent, 2 years working on one book that I never finished yet, and so I can sympathize. And there was such a turning point when I was like, I want to do this for real. I want to finish things and get people to read them. And so that turning point happened, and I was like, I want to be a professional. I need to write every day or, 5 times a week at least. I need to treat this like a job. And so once I got that mindset, then all of the discipline and all the experience kicked in and just pushed me forward.
and even now, are you do you write every day these days?
I write. I try to. Not every day because sometimes work takes over, and
Right.
I'm on the computer all day. But especially when I've set deadlines for myself, so I do try to write every day. And I usually succeed at least 5 out of 7 days.
Mhm. Mhm. And is this structured writing for your products? Do you do any practice writing? Do um, are you at the point now where you feel that you can concentrate strictly on the things that you want to produce, or do you think? I mean, I still. I mean, obviously, for me, I'm a work in progress, and I want every book to be better than the last book.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I don't always know how to achieve that, but I do know that by keeping writing and trying to write things that are outside my wheelhouse, it will eventually make me a better writer. And I still read books on writing novels too, by
Mhm.
John Gardner and people like that. What do you do in the maintenance of and the growth of your craft?
In between projects, so like in the spaces where I've sent the book to beta readers and I'm not working on anything with a strict deadline, I do kind of do free writing. There's a website called 750words.com that it used to be free. Now you have to pay, but I used that for many years, kind of in those in between times when I just wanted to play around or I had an idea in my head. So I would just write 750 words of it, and the site saves it and tells you, like it does statistics and stuff like that. And so I have either it's flash fiction or just a brief scene or a piece of the scene. And from those things sometimes comes other things that I figure I want to work on. Like I had this idea, I spent 20 minutes writing about 1,000 words, and then I put it away. And a few weeks or months later, I can come back to it and be like, I want to expand that, and that becomes a story. So that kind of thing is really helpful. It loosens me up from, okay, this 4-book series that I'm writing. I do like to branch out. I have lots of other ideas and things that I want to write about. So those little chunks help me out a lot.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Finding Forrester with Sean Connery and I watched that kind of early on when I started writing, and it was a revelation to me that you could sit down and write, and it doesn't have to be in the service of a book or anything specific, but what it does is it massages and exercises your imagination to make the process freer for you. And I was really surprised that it really does work. So now if I sit down and write, I still can't let go of the fact that it has to be for something. But I'll start out with a premise and maybe even a good ending. That's how I write. I write backwards. I come up with a good ending for a book or a script, and then I'll write up to get to that ending. So, I mean, those kind of exercises and seeing how other people do their process has been very helpful to me. Was the your writers group kind of like that same kind of resource for you, seeing how other people handle the process, and did it help you refine yours?
I think that the writers group, not necessarily other people's processes, although I'm fascinated by other people's processes, and trying different things, like you said, reading books about writing, reading blogs about writing, and finding other things to incorporate in ways to do things better. And knowing other writers and sort of fellowshipping with them is really important to that. Like I joined, once we moved back to Maryland, I joined the Maryland Romance Writers, and we meet every month. And that has actually been extremely helpful as a writing group, because you're around published authors that are really serious about their craft as well. And so you do get to talk to people and to learn about how they do things, how they plot, and making sure that you're always open to learning about people's processes and seeing where you can tweak your own. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. Now, how did you find this group? I mean, you're in Baltimore, which is, right in that area is pretty, a dense population. But I mean, how did you locate this one group? Because it sounds like they were exactly what you needed in an almost magical way. You know, but, I mean, well, no, I mean, how did you find them though?
I was looking because when I moved, I lost my group of people that I'd been with for years, and I was looking for something like that. I did a Google search, and I had heard of Romance Writers of America as a national organization, and I was reading a lot of romance in addition to other things, and I wasn't sure if I was writing. I'm not writing straight ahead romance, but I went to one of the meetings, and I just found it so helpful to be in a room with all these other people who are serious. They are either traditionally published or independently published, and it was just inspiring. And the most inspiring thing about that meeting is at the monthly meetings, every meeting, you go around and they ask the question, have you submitted to an agent this month? Have you, been accepted this month? Have you published anything this month? There are all these questions, and people are raising their hands. Yes, I did this. Yes, I published this. I got accepted. I got an agent. And you're looking around at these people who are just like you, and they're next to you, and you're like, these women can do it. I can do it too. And that was the final thing that was like that community. So, just to encourage anyone who's a writer, find that community. And I did. I did a Google search and found something that was nearby that, looked interesting. Just dropped in the meeting, didn't know what to expect. And I found a really great group of people that has inspired me.
And what is it, a monthly group?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's a word to the wise to other writers out there. And I also think that the best benefit of being in a well-structured group like that is to help you get over the sensitivities of being a creative. To get you used to listening to constructive criticism, to get you listening to other people's perspectives about what you've done, because that's a tough thing. Because most people feel that any criticism of their self is some sort of invalidation of their existence, and it's just not that way at all. You're going to get some assholes out there who are going to critique you in a mean way just because it's their nature, or because they're resentful, or you did a story about how they wet the bed and they took it as you were writing about them, or whatever the hell their bone to pick is. But it's not the end of the world, and it certainly should not dissuade somebody from plying their craft and from somebody trying to do something creative. But it's tough. It's very tough. I mean, when my first book went up on Amazon, I had no idea whether I had written a good story or not, because the people around me, my friends, your friends don't want to hurt you. And, your friends are not going to, the first thing your friend is not going to say is, are you sure you want to publish that? Because, of course, they know they would crush you emotionally. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. And sometimes you have to get out of your circle in order to find the best objective judgment on what it is you've done. And every creative needs that. You need that. People will go, well, I know I wrote a good story. And I go, well, how do you know you wrote a good story? He says, well, because I did, because I just wrote it. It came to my head and it was brilliant. And what do you say to somebody like that? And then it goes up for sale and nobody, 3 people buy it in the first year, and then, again, by having that arrogance instead of seeking good counsel and people who know more than you do, you're going to improve. Yeah, go ahead.
When things go up there, it's strangers. It's people who've never looked you in the eye writing one-star reviews, and so if you can't take the criticism with someone who actually has to say it to your face or has some sort of interaction with you, and is going to just naturally be a little kinder in general, you're always going to meet people, but for the most part, I have had very good critique experiences across the board, because you have to look at somebody and try to put this in a constructive way that hopefully is not going to crush their spirit, because the people on the internet don't care about crushing your spirit. They don't know you. They've never seen you. So it's better to have it done, up front by someone who at least has to look you in your eye when they're telling you something.
Yeah, and I will be entirely honest. When I saw that 1-star review pop up about my book, I said, who does he think? And then At first I got angry. Fortunately, I was mature enough not to go, oh, well, then I might have done a terrible thing.
Right.
But I got to the point where I said, okay, so this is one man's perspective. And then now I use that review because it is such a stark reminder of how different people view, the American experience, what living in this country is. So in that case, it was instructive and it was a good thing. But I'm not going to BS anybody. It took a little while to get above that instead of being resentful or pissed off or anything like that. And fortunately, I've got an ego as big as all outdoors, so I never have to worry about somebody crushing my spirit because they can't possibly be as smart as me or know as much as me or be as good as me. So that helps me keep it even keeled.
That's helpful.
Yeah, that's what they say. Yeah, but I mean, it's pretty cool talking to you because, first of all, you have shown people, you have demonstrated to people your process, and your process is very focused. It's very businesslike, and it's sane and workable. And as evidenced by the fact that you have a book published, it's successful. So I think people who listen to this show are going to get a good takeaway about how to plan their plan of attack for getting published. What is your plan of attack for getting your name out there? What is your plan of attack for finishing the damn book?
Yeah.
And there are people who don't finish a book. It's not an easy thing. And then finishing a good book, even harder. Finishing a good book that other people, eventually find, even harder. Finishing a good book that other people find where their opinions and their reviews touch other people to induce them to buy a book, even harder. So, that pyramid that you have to climb in terms of getting your book published and getting some notoriety, the trip gets steeper and steeper the higher you go. I don't think that's going to be any problem for you because being, you called it anal, but being aware of the process and focusing your efforts on conquering that process, I see that as a good thing. So I mean, I see nothing but good things ahead for you. I want you to stay in touch. I want you to keep track of what you do. Have you thought about, in your marketing, are you going to go to any of these conventions, sci-fi cons, or anything like that? And is that part of your marketing strategy, or not?
I would like to. It hasn't been as of yet because I still feel with one book that maybe it might not be worth it. But I might try to go to some of the local ones. I know that in Baltimore there's Balticon and there's some other sort of cons in the area. And I just have to kind of evaluate and set a budget and everything and try to figure out how I'm going to do that. But yeah, I think that it's all about getting it out there and getting people to know that you exist and that this book exists. And those could be a good way to do that.
Yeah. And there really is, I don't know if you're going to figure out, or if your calculation is going to be like mine, where you figure out that if 80-20 is about right for you. But the other thing is you have to be very, very careful about your cost benefits because not every possible thing you do is going to be of benefit. Some people say, well, I went to this con and, I sold enough books to pay for it. But that's still, that's still kind of a crapshoot. That's not a given. It's not an automatic.
Right.
So the other part is, that 80% of the business of doing business, of your time, is huge. And, again, that's another place where I think people can spend some time with other people who've gone through the process to see what they've done, avoid some of the pitfalls that they have, and maybe you'll find some creative ways that people have not maybe utilized so much just by listening to other people. So I think you've done a great job at doing that. Not that I'm the final arbiter. If I was all that smart, I wouldn't be here every Friday night. I'd have a life. No, I would. I would have a real life instead of having to worry about this ankle bracelet. I hope I'm going to pull Jarvis in a minute or so, but I hope you've had a good time here. Is there anything specific, anything that kind of really jumps out at you that you would want to convey to the people who listen to this about the process you went through getting this first book done?
It's it was sort of like marriage, where people say, "Oh, it's hard." You know it's hard, but until you go through it, you don't know how hard it is. It's hard, but it's worth it if you have it in your heart to write and you want people to read your stories. I think the one thing that I really wanted to do was to treat it professionally. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it to be a hobby. I do want this to be a career, to move into, if I can, hopefully full-time writing at some point. That's my goal. So I want to do everything as professionally as possible and put forth the best product I can. And that's sort of what I would stress. And
right.
I thank you for being here Friday nights. I think these are great interviews that you do. And so thank you for not having a life.
Is that a backhanded compliment? I'm gonna do the math when we get off the air. You probably don't know from listening to the shows that once we stop the recording, there's a little bit of time where we have a little chit chat, and some of the people in the chat room may come up with some new questions and things like that. So hang on after we stop the recording if you have the time. Do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I'm going to ask. I'm going to have Jarvis come back on if he's done getting his beer. I'm sorry, he said water. Yeah, because we want to take a little bit of time to talk about Florida A&M's Literature Fest last week, where we had a number of the BSFS writers actually were at the Literature Fest as panelists, and I was privileged to be chosen as one of them. Which for me it was kind of a heady thing, because my first book was published in 2009, and the two headliners were Tananarive Due. She does mostly horror. She's well known. She's actually a member of the site. And the other headliner who closed out the whole event was Walter Mosley, who's done 42 books, and his first book, Devil in a Blue Dress, was made into a movie. That had to be a great experience for him, to have his book, his very first book, made into a movie. And so the event was organized very, very well. Everybody had their own sessions, and I got lucky. I got to do an extra session because Cerise Rennie Murphy, who is also a member of BlackScienceFictionSociety.com, her flight, excuse me, from Washington, D.C., was canceled last Wednesday. Didn't you guys get a storm up in that area?
Yeah, we've had bad weather.
Yeah, so she got snowed in, and she didn't get there Thursday. So I was lucky enough to be able to do two sessions. The first session was about an hour and a half, and it was about writing. And like you said, exactly like you said, my talk was about society, culture, and science fiction, and why science fiction and speculative fiction is such a useful vehicle to talk about the world today, because it puts a little safe distance between people and the reality of a situation, especially if you're pointing out a situation that's not so cool, or something that really bothers people. My next book is about it's about this whole situation where people, white cops are killing unarmed and innocent black people at a much, much higher rate than they ever have before. It's like shooting somebody is the first recourse, where just a generation ago it was the very last thing you did if you had to resolve, a serious problem. Mm-hmm. So I have to put that 15 years in the future so that people don't get pissed at me like they did when NWA did that song F the Police, because and if I'm not careful, there's a whole bunch of crazy people out there who would probably go and shoot somebody who they thought was advocating something that they weren't. And even if you put it as a speculative world, not everybody's going to see that. They're going to go, oh, well, people are going to see through it. I mean, how else do you write a story without the experiences that you have? Right. So anyway, it was a great event. Tananarive Due was there. Her father, Tananarive was born on the Florida A&M campus. At the Florida A&M, they've got a hospital on the grounds, and she was born there. her dad was really big in civil rights, and he was there, older man, a great guy. Actually, for some reason, he was fascinated with me being as old as I am and being biracial. Because back in the 50s, they didn't have none of that. Of course they did. People just didn't talk about it. But it was a great event. Florida A&M treated us very, very well, from transportation to and from the hotel to picking us up, dropping us off at the airport, making sure we got around during the day. And this was their 7th annual one, but this is the biggest one they've ever had, and they're going to have it next year, and they've already invited me back. So I have to keep my nose clean between now and then, so that they go, William, with that police record, we're a little skittish about having you back. So, I mean, that's a cool thing to look forward to, because if you're writing Black speculative fiction, there are learning institutions. Yes, probably almost all of them are HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, but they're using works like that in class because creatives like you and I are writing about issues, one step removed from ripped from the headlines of today, but still discussing the possibilities that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I write? What I wrote? Okay, here's the elevator pitch. The Dark Side trilogy tells a story of what happens in America when they find out that Black folks have been secretly living on the backside of the moon since before Neil Armstrong got there. And so one of the things that I wanted to speculate on was a society of African Americans that is able to live, thrive, and survive completely away from any influences of white America. Mm-hmm. And that's why they've chosen it as they're using the first 2 books in a class there. A couple classes there. So seriously, this was such a surprise. This was the biggest honor I've ever been paid as a creative, to have a university invite you in to talk about your work. And I think every single black creative who writes has the opportunity to maybe go through what I went through. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody, if you write well, there's going to be a certain amount of people who are going to recognize you for your writing. And I'm not saying that I'm all of that, but I did get the recognition. So I feel very good about it. Again, you're doing the same thing. You're talking about, a biracial person making their way through culture and society. And we all know, it's still such a big deal. People still make a big deal, well, obviously for the president or Tiger Woods or what have you, because there are more and more biracial kids being born every single day. So where do they fit in society? Where do they fit in culture? We know that just having a certain color of skin can make you a target for some pretty ugly things that happen in this country. And so are we homogenizing our society where there are so many biracial people, so many multi-ethnic people out there, that eventually even law enforcement is going to have to cut that nonsense out? Because what do you do when that big of a percentage of people is multi-ethnic, So I think those are good things to face up to in writing. And some people, like, the queen of Black science fiction, and there is no other yet, Octavia Butler, she wrote in Kindred about going back in slavery times and having to deal with an entire society that was arrayed against you. Sometimes it kind of feels like that today. We're allowed to have jobs, we're allowed to do certain things, but yet, my darker brethren, because I'm light-skinned, if they're driving in certain places, they could be on the phone with me, using their hands free, of course, and somebody pulls them over, and they got a shiny picture in their wallet, and all of a sudden they get shot because somebody says, "Oh, I thought he had a gun." And the thing that bothers me is the get out of jail free card these days for any white cop, and actually by extension because of these stand your ground laws, Any white person can kill any person of color today, and all I have to do is say, I feared for my life.
Right.
That's the get out of jail free card. I mean, that's all you have to say. When did black folks become so scary? Well, according to Angela Davis in a article she wrote in November, that this is not a new thing. This has been going on for over 400 years.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make that stop? That's my science fiction story. How do we make it stop? What do we do in our culture that when a white cop pulls their gun and points it at a black person, what is going to make them not pull the trigger? Because nowadays, really, there's no consequence. Oh, yeah, they got to do a desk job for 30 days, and they have to fill out extra paperwork. Mm-hmm. But we're seeing, Darren Wilson gets cut loose by everybody. We're seeing these prosecutors. We're seeing these judges. We see these unbalanced juries giving whites a pass, like George Zimmerman. And so what will make whites not pull that trigger? And that's the story of my book. I've come up with the one thing that will make them stop. It's a pretty ugly thing, and so that's why I have to make it a speculative fiction story. It can't be today's fiction. It's got to be, 15 years in the future, basically to keep me alive, because they're going to be. Well, I mean, people are going to read that, and they're going to go, "Oh, William, you're advocating such a terrible thing." And this is horrible because what you're doing is you're now putting our police officers at risk. Mm-hmm. And, my answer to that is, wait, we've got like 42 million black folks who have been killed with impunity in this country over the last 450 years. And where's the outcry of those families? And these are innocent ones. Where's the outcry for those families? Where's the outcry for an entire culture that has been doing it? And there isn't any. So one of the things that I think speculative fiction does very, very well is allow us to talk about these issues. And yes, it's one step removed from, poking a finger in somebody's eye and going, I hate whitey or whatever. But we have to talk about how are we going to make this a sane place for our kids. I mean, if you have a kid, a dark-skinned kid, part of their growing up has to be you telling them how to behave around the police so that they don't get shot.
Right.
I don't know of a white family in America where they have that discussion.
I don't know.
Seriously, even dumbass hillbillies, they don't have that discussion because probably they're related to the cops. So the fact that has to happen in our country where you as a parent have to tell your child, look, it's dangerous out there. You could be taken away from me. I could be taken away from you for no reason whatsoever. So this is what we have to do to try to minimize that. I mean, that's such a colossal shame. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I've talked enough about that. I just want to tell everybody that Florida A&M's their Literature Fest. It's an annual event. Apparently, it's going to be, I guess, in February, or at least near the end of February. Is a gorgeous event. They treated me exceedingly well. They treated us all well and with respect. And that was it was kind of funny because I have never been called Dr. Hayashi so many times in my entire life. I don't use the moniker, but for them it was a necessary honorific of respect because they wanted me to also be an example to the students there of what can be achieved by a person and what people can do. So it was a great event. I shared it with Penelope Flynn, Cerise Rennie Murphy, Valjean Jeffers, Milton Davis, Tananarive Due, and Walter Mosley. So I think that was everybody. Yeah. And so I'm fortunate enough that I've had a connection to every single one of them in some way or fashion. I interviewed Tananarive Due. Penelope interviewed me for this site and some other sites. I guess the only person I really didn't have a connection with was Cerise Rennie Murphy, because when she was interviewed for BSFS for the Genesis Science Fiction radio show, I actually had a date on a Friday night, and I don't feel the least bit guilty about that. So Penelope filled in. She fills in, and she interviewed Cerise. And Milton Davis has been around a long time. He does sword and sorcery, and he's really, really well versed in writing for what we call steampunk instead of steampunk. Same thing, but from a black perspective. Walter Mosley, I have seen and spoken to on, I think, 2 or 3 occasions at Chicago State. He's a Chicago native and spends time here. And I interviewed Valjean Jeffers, and she did a talk on world building. So I felt very privileged to be in that company and had a great time because these were, for the most part, all people that I either knew or had spoken to or interviewed. And now you are also somebody who's been interviewed. And the other thing I wanted to ask you to do is, if you do any of these conventions,
mm-hmm.
or you are having an appearance or someplace, please post it up on the BSFS events calendar so that people can check you out. You know, like if there's a weekend where you're, you know, what if you're at Comic-Con or something like that, and there are other people who are they're gonna know you're gonna be there. They're gonna try to meet you. Oh, that's the other thing. Roy Evans from BSFS drove down from Atlanta, and he's a radio guy. He has his a radio network, the Jericho Broadcast Network, but he actually drove down to Tallahassee to attend a day's worth of sessions with us, and he even took me out to lunch. So, I mean, it's such a great group. The people who are on the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com, and it's basically a social networking site for black creatives and people who like black content or black-themed content. So it's a great place to belong to. Post up your events if you do go someplace, because, you know, you never know who you're going to meet.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you do that. And Leslie, it has been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
I mean, you are such a great example. And I know that some people get, you know, they think saying that is tiresome, but it's good to hear somebody who's focused and someone who really mounted a campaign of success, because
mm-hmm.
that's what we should all be doing. It's not, you can't leave it up to chance. Not everybody is going to be sleeping in their car, you know, one year, and the next year they're going to be selling all this Harry Potter stuff. You know,
no.
Lightning strikes so rarely.
Right.
So I thank you for being here. I've had a great time with you. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Thank you so much.
That, you know, I'm sure you're going to be invited back. You know, next time you have something big coming up, let us know so that Jarvis can book you.
Sure.
And,
thank you.
Oh, yeah, well, no, don't thank me. Thank him. He's management. I'm labor. So that's how it breaks down. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jarvis so he can say his good night to everybody, and just hang on and after we're done with the recording, okay?
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much, Leslie. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for everyone for participating on the show in whatever capacity that you have, whether you are a guest, whether you are a host, whether you are listening in. Each of you are appreciated. And this was a lot of great information on here that was shared. I'm sitting here just soaking it all up. So me and my son, he's sitting back here all quiet now, but he was like, "Who's that?" and all this stuff in the background. Mm-hmm. But I really appreciate you guys sharing your time with us tonight with the community, and continue to share what we're doing with everybody that you know. Post in the event section and check out what some of the other people on the site are doing. It's as of this weekend, the site is 7 years old, and we're probably going to acknowledge that on Sunday. But Black Science Fiction Society has been around 7 years, and there's 7 years of information from around the world on here about Black science fiction. I was explaining to a friend of mine that I learned more in that first year of doing the site about Black science fiction than I had amassed over a whole lifetime, because we're plugged into a network that's global, and people share their information about books and creative projects that are going on from wherever they are. But once again, thank you so much for participating on the radio show, and continue to support us, and we will continue to support you by sharing everything that you're doing and buying your products and things of that nature. So with that said, thank you so much. I'll probably be in the chat room in another 10 minutes. But thank you for participating.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and one more thing. The BSFS, or actually the Genesis Science Fiction Radio YouTube channel, is now live. And through the efforts of James Jones, we have a bunch of these shows already posted up, and it's going to be a good channel for us to put other audio and video content from BSFS.
So definitely, I just posted the link, so definitely click it. I think we're up a little over 90 shows over the course of 2 years. Now, that's 90 different black creators from around the world sharing what they've been doing with us. So definitely check it out. There's some interesting stuff on there.
So on behalf of everybody who makes this possible and those people who drop by to make it great, I want to thank everybody. Have a great, I guess, evening. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in, who listens later, who's here live. And we'll see you again next week. So everybody have a good evening.
All right. Bye-bye.